ReefBum is sponsored by Polo Reef, Champion Lighting and Supply, and GHL.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. So in this video I wanted to cover 5 things that I think can make or break a reef tank. Number 1 is don't dose too many things to your reef tank. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. You can really run into trouble if you dose too many things like coral food and amino acids. Even trace elements, you can run into problems if you're dosing too many different trace elements. Yeah, I do the ICP testing with Fauna Marine. I'm doing it on a weekly basis. I'm sticking to the dynamic trace elements for the most part. I'm using the Captivate Aquaculture trace elements. I'm dosing zinc, I'm dosing vanadium, nickel, selenium, molybdenum, as well as fluoride. So I used to dose iron and manganese and cobalt because I was getting low levels with those elements, but I'm not doing that anymore. Just trying to keep it simple, trying to keep it dialed back. What I'm dosing, the other things I'm dosing right now, I'm using the Captivate Aquaculture Remediate, which is a dry bacteria that's helping with the nitrate and the phosphate removal. I'm also dosing nitrate and phosphate, but I've dialed that back a lot. Just looking at my test results is just to make sure that I'm not at zero with those nutrients. The other thing I'm doing is I have a do-it-yourself coral and fish food. I've got a lot of fresh ingredients in that. I also have some reefroids, so yeah, there is some coral food in that. But I'm adding that to the tank twice a day. But it's it's a clean food. I'm just trying to be smart about it all. I'm trying not to dirty up the tank water, so to speak. I used to dose live phytoplankton. I stopped doing that. I didn't see immediate or direct benefits from that. Yeah, I think the pod population certainly was thriving and increasing. Coral health-wise, I'm not sure I saw the results there. So I think it's just being simple, trying to not add too much junk to the reef tanks, which can cause issues. One more thing on this topic. An important thing, look at your corals. If your corals are looking really good, then don't start dosing new things. Stop. Keep it the same. If your corals are not looking good, that's a whole different story. But observe those corals, and if things are looking good, then really I don't see a need to start dosing a lot of things because other people are talking about stuff and how they started dosing things and their tank really hit that next level. Just look at your corals, and if they're looking good, you're good. Number 2, don't add chemicals to your reef tank to solve a problem. I'm mostly talking about doing stuff like adding ChemiClean to get rid of cyano. It's a quick fix, it's a band-aid, and I think there's enough evidence out there that shows adding that sort of chemical will certainly impact the microbiome of your tank, the bacteria in there. So that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. Over the long haul, that's going to cause some sort of issue. There's going to be some sort of collateral damage, and it might not manifest itself soon after the treatment, but down the road, I think there's a good chance that it will. So I'm just a big advocate of treating stuff like manual removal of algae. If you got bubble algae, try to take the rocks out, scrub it off. Use a cleanup crew to get rid of other types of algae, cyano, siphon it up. Remove a lot of the detritus. That can solve the issue. But if you still have a lot of algae in the tank and you're getting test results like 0 nitrates and 0 phosphates, you're like, oh, okay, well, I need to keep dosing nitrates and phosphates because I've got 0 levels. Well, no, it's because all the algae in there is sucking up those nutrients. So I just really strongly feel like chemicals are a bad thing to a reef tank, and just try to treat things naturally. So number 3 is patience, and this ties into number 2. I talked about quick fixes in terms of using chemicals on a tank. So what if it takes a few months to manually remove or overcome a cyano or other type of algae issue with the tank? I know it can be demoralizing to be dealing with that sort of thing over time, but you got to really be patient. The big thing is, if the corals are looking good, I've had cyano on my tanks, but my corals will look great. why, you know, why try to have that quick fix? And, you know, so the patience on that front will certainly pay off. Another thing with patience and reef keeping is that sometimes corals might not look good, you know, and maybe they brown out for some reason, or there's, you know, small amount of polyp extension, whatever. Don't take that coral and toss it. Don't give up on it. Corals are very, very resilient. I've seen stuff turn around after months. I've had brownouts that have turned around 3-4 months down the road, and I was so happy that I didn't get rid of those corals. So, you know, reef keeping is a hobby for people that have, you know, it rewards people with patience. And there's a lot of different examples of being patient in reef keeping. So it's a trait that will come in very, very handy and equate to success. Number 4 is maintenance. Maintenance is so important to keep up with a reef tank. I have a checklist that tells me when I need to do stuff on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannual, annual basis. So, you know, the last thing you want to do is when you're on vacation to have that return pump seize up on you because you didn't do your regular maintenance on it. Peristaltic dosing pump heads, that's critical. That's critical. You know, again, you don't want to not be dosing certain things that you thought you were dosing because the pump head is failing. So I just feel like if you could stay regimented and stick to a maintenance schedule and don't slack off, do the water changes. You know, I do weekly 5% water changes. And when I'm doing that, I siphon out all the detritus in my sumps. You know, I clean the overflow boxes to make sure there's no debris caught in there. There's just so many different things that could happen if you don't maintain them. So that's why I do believe that maintenance is one of those critical pieces to success with reef keeping. The 5th and final thing that I really think is important with reef keeping, and this is coral specific, is you know, doing a quarantine, some sort of quarantine process. You know, ideally it is best to have a separate quarantine tank for incoming corals. I have a 20-gallon tank that I use. I don't have it set up all the time, but I've got a little nano skimmer on that thing, a little heater. I've got a light on top of it, and you know, recirculating pump, and that's about it. And I put corals that I get, you know, SPS Frags in that quarantine tank, and I observe them for a few weeks, for a month or so. And I do weekly dips with potassium chloride to make sure, you know, if there are any aqua-eating flatworms, that I'll break the cycle there. I do every 2 weeks I use interceptor, and I bomb the quarantine tank with an interceptor. I've got a whole video in terms of quarantine corals. I'll drop that link in the video description below. But if you can't, you know, and it's only a few $100s for a quarantine tank, and I guess the same goes for fish. If you wanted to set up a quarantine tank to quarantine fish, that is also a good idea. And again, you can set these up pretty cheaply. But at the very least, you know, if you can't do that, I would recommend getting a microscope. You can get a very good microscope for $250. So specifically for SPS, you can look for bite marks and eggs for aqua-eating flatworms. And certainly dip everything that comes in. I don't care who you get stuff from. Trust nobody. Always dip and observe to see if anything is coming off, you know, in those dips. But you want to eliminate those pests. And you know, if you get the pest in your tank, it can be you know, very harmful for the corals and just screw things up over the long term. So those are my 5 tips for making or breaking a reef tank. If you have some other tips, please drop them in the comments below. So that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Until next time, be safe and be well. Later.